I'm Cape Joel, and I'm back again as I continue my journey through the world of My Hero Academia Season 1. In the last video, I learned all about Midoriya and his personal journey to herodom, as well as getting to meet my favorite character so far, All Might. Will that stay the same? Well, let's hop on in, shall we? Episode 4 actually started off by giving us a little bit more insight into who some of the more powerful and famous heroes are at UA. We got the resident fire guy, Endeavor. He looks pretty cool, I guess. But then we meet a character called Best Jeanist, and I was not prepared for this. No one told me about this guy when I began this video series. You can't just spring a superpowered Gene Man on me like that. I wasn't ready. Also, they introduce this character in a quick little flash and then move on like it's no big deal. It's a very big deal to me, especially because as I found out later, he's one of the most powerful characters in the universe, and also Best Jeanist is a Japanese fashion show. But I digress. When we left off, Midoriya was ready to take his UA entrance exam. They've set up a whole mock city for him and the other applicants to run around smashing robots. Right off the bat, Midoriya feels like everyone is against him because, well, yeah, they kind of are. Once again, everyone sees him as a big old joke and unworthy of being here, especially considering he almost fell down and cracked his head open before the test even started. The test itself also serves as a nice chance to show off some of the heavy hitters in action and learn about their powers up close and personal before we even learn most of their names. Katsuki impresses right out of the gate with overwhelming force. Then you got that Joe-looking guy from before. His name is Ida, who turns out to be a speedster with vents on his legs. Honestly, from the opening, I thought he was some sort of Iron Man guy, but no, those vents are part of his body. Then there's the girl who saved Midoriya last episode, Oracho Uraka. Oh god, can they just get superhero names already so I won't embarrass myself anymore? She turns out to be a real powerhouse here, able to manipulate gravity both in herself and around her. Now, right away, things are looking bad for our man Midoriya. He doesn't know how his new quirk works, and worse still, he's afraid that if he uses it, there's a good chance he might break every bone in his body just due to the sheer untapped force. In fact, he has to be saved in his first encounter with a robot by a French figure skater who shoots lasers from his crotchal region. Okay, technically it's from his navel, as we discover later, and he also calls it his beautiful beam, but he can't shoot it for too long though, or he gets a tummy ache. Oh, for real, dog? Is that what the kids are calling it in the streets now? Shooting your beautiful beam? Things take a major turn though when the UA alumni watching the test decides to unleash the Omega level foe, the one that no one is actually expected to beat, which is why it offers no points. Everyone runs from the fight even after it's revealed Ochako is stuck in the rubble. This means against all odds, in order to save a life, Midoriya digs deep and activates the power of All Might for the first time. He wins the battle easily enough, but as he feared, breaks damn near every bone in his body just trying. In fact, he might have died too if Ochako didn't use her gravity powers right away. Also, good job subverting the damsel in distress paradigm. Technically, she saved him first, he repaid the favor, and then when he was in need, she saved him back. It's a fun thing they do. Now, what about this broken body? Well, for that, they have UA's resident school nurse, an old lady with the amazing power of healing grandma kisses. That is actually freaking genius, and I love her design too. Especially with a name like Healing Girl, you have to wonder that she got that moniker pretty early on in her career and just never changed it. In the end, it's only Ide who's smart enough to actually realize what went down here. Midoriya got no actual points, but acted more like a hero than anyone else. It's a nice moment of character growth for him. He thought very little of Midoriya at first and was honestly kind of a jerk to him, but unlike a lot of the other students, he actually does seem to realize the difference between right and wrong and what a real hero would do in that situation. Another fun thing this show does is in between the big hero stuff, we actually get to see Midoriya at home. I like his mom as a character. She clearly cares a lot, but isn't always perfect, and over the last 10 months, she's been put through the ringer as her son threw himself entirely into training. There's this real encroaching feeling of dread going on in the house that if Midoriya doesn't get accepted into UA, it's gonna crush him way worse than finding out he may never have a quirk did back when he was a kid. Oh, but wouldn't you just know it, combat was only one thing the entrance test with the robots was supposed to be measuring. Turns out having someone save someone and, act like a real hero brings with it more points than just straight up winning a fight. Ochako finds this out firsthand. She was actually willing to go to the faculty and give some of her points up to Midoriya after he saved her life, but in the end, she didn't have to. In fact, she received points too. too for saving him. So yeah, Midoriya manages to pull it out once again and make it into Hero School. Furthermore, All Might is going to be there as well. He had actually come to Japan to take a teaching job, wherein, get this, he had also hoped to pass off his quirk to a deserving student at the school. Little did he know he'd run into Midoriya though, and that would change just about everything. Now as episode 5 begins, Midoriya is finally ready for his first day of UA classes. It also seems as much as Katsuki hates Midoriya, he hates Ida too for daring to try and get him to straighten up and fly right. Ida says that having such a bad attitude makes him, and I'm sure by extension the audience too, question why a guy like this would even want to become a superhero if not for all the money and glory that's said to come along with it as a package deal. Speaking of Katsuki, and it seems that when Midoriya was getting accepted into UA right next to him, he was basically livid. Again, totally forgetting that Midoriya had saved his life not that long ago, but hey, shonen rival's got a shonen rival, am I right? Now every high school drama needs a homeroom teacher, and for class 1A it's a man named Aizawa, and holy crap, this guy gets off to one hell of a start. First and foremost, he's an amazing design. He looks like a hobo, he's got constantly bloodshot eyes, and he crawls around like a slug in a sleeping bag for some reason. Also, unlike other teachers, Aizawa demands the kids show the full force of their quirks on day 1 in a series of contests, and whoever loses this series of contests gets the boot. So he's basically Professor Snape, but for Hero School, you're telling me? Alright, I can dig that. The icing on the cake, too, though, is that he hates the government and the media for propping up showboating heroes like All Might, and because of that, he really hates Midoriya. Well, at first anyway, but more on that in a minute. The series of tests actually proved to be a really cool way to get introduced to the rest of the classmates and characters we're going to be following around, as well as their unique powers. Some are pretty damn cool and interesting, and serve to solve the puzzle that is these tests in ways I was not expecting. Of course, in big ensemble casts like this, I always have to wonder early on who are we actually going to follow out of these characters and who's eventually going to fall by the wayside. Now, the truly crazy thing about Aizawa is that when it comes to dealing with Midoriya, he's not without a point. The kid can't control his powers, and if every time he uses them he half kills himself, that's going to make him a major liability for himself and his classmates. That's why to truly test him, Aizawa uses his power of Erasure to turn off his quirk. Yeah, that's right, the dude's hero name is Eraserhead, like the famous movie. How cool is that? Again, Midoriya is forced to learn on the fly and figure out how to only tap into a small fraction of his power. Man, Midoriya sure does have to prove himself at every single turn in this show, doesn't he? No chosen one preferential treatment for him, huh? I see why people are always comparing him to Rock Lee from Naruto, and yes, I have seen just enough Naruto to make that reference. Now once Katsuki sees that Midoriya might be the real deal after all, he freaks the hell out and attacks him right there in the middle of class, only for Aizawa to stop him, showing that he's got a lot more going for him than just crazy eye power. We also get treated to a little flashback here, showing that once upon a time Katsuki and Midoriya weren't only close, but maybe even friends. Midoriya looked up to him. Wow, childhood friend turned bully. I guess he's not only his shonen rival, he's also his Flash Thompson. Furthermore, despite what he said early on, Aizawa never actually planned to expel anyone, this time anyway. He only wanted to motivate the class to perform at their absolute fullest. As All Might says later on, Aizawa is a kind man in his own strange way, and perhaps he worried about Midoriya trying to succeed in a world where the deck is always going to be so heavily stacked against him. And hey, while we're on the subject of that, remember how Grandma Healing Girl saved Midoriya from near death? Well, that's not going to be an end-all, be-all fix here. Every time he gets patched up, it costs him stamina, and if he's healed too much, he'll just end up dying anyway. Ouch. But on the upside, Midoriya is actually starting to make some real friends. Yeah, sure, one of them is a super intense by-the-book overachiever, and the other one is a girl he can barely make eye contact with because, well, she's the only girl that seems to willingly talk to him. But hey, moving up in the world is moving up in the world. Things get even better, too, as the next day Midoriya gets to take part in a class taught by his all-time hero, All Might, who's rocking his so-called Silver Age costume. You know, it hits me now that all the American references around All Might are probably meant as a nod to the fact that superhero comics as a genre are a uniquely American creation. Well, thought up by an American and drawn by a Canadian, but you know, let's not split hairs now. It's in this episode too, everyone ends up getting their costumes, which apparently they picked out and helped design via their application paperwork. Getting a themed costume was hard for Midoriya as he only got his powers recently. It's a good thing though that his mom went out of her way to make him one based on the doodles in his book. I like the idea that the mom is the one behind the costume. It's very much like Ma Kent making Superman his first costume. The joke, though, is that the costume looks kinda bad and is just a shameless, almost embarrassing tribute to All Might. It's clear from all the promo artwork, though, this isn't gonna be the costume he ends up staying with, not for long anyway. Now, the exercise for that day is 2-on-2 team-based combat, with one team playing villains trying to set up a bomb and the other team playing heroes trying to stop them, and wouldn't you just know it, Katsuki is picked for the villain team, meaning he can actually make good on all his threats of violence from before. Now let's talk about superhero names for a second. Uraka actually called Midoriya Deku because she heard Katsuki say it to him, not actually knowing that it was an insult. Deku, as far as I can tell in Japanese, means useless person or a do-nothing type of person. Its origins come from Japanese puppet theater, specifically wooden puppets, and because the Japanese love their puns and their wordplay, and because kanji is rich and interesting and all that other stuff, Deku can also go from meaning can't do to can do, which literally means Midoriya is going to be the can-do man and takes that as his super name. Midoriya comes to this grand revelation too after putting Katsuki on his back. After all, Midoriya studies every hero around him, and that includes Katsuki. He knew what move he was gonna make before he even made it. And it's on that triumphant note this 3-pack of episodes comes to an end, and I must say, if I wasn't planning on watching the whole season for work anyway, it would be these episodes that actually really hooked me in. The world feels rich and varied, but not overwhelming. Not yet, anyway. That is also one of the big curses of shonen anime like this. They get very top-heavy very quickly. The design work of all the heroes is super on point and really blew me away. I'm also really starting to get invested in Midoriya's journey to herodom and how he might manage to overcome every increasingly crazy obstacle thrown his way. So, until we meet again, everyone, I've been Cape Joel, and be sure to join me next time when we take a closer look at the next 3 episodes.